of this aspiration? Intersectionality.
La interseccionalidad es ahora muy importante tanto para el movimiento feminista como para el movimiento activista.
But there are others. Let me mention the emergence of social reproduction feminism, of racial capitalism theory, of eco-Marxism and eco-socialism, and in the United States, the surprising popularity among young people of democratic socialism.
Pero hay otros, como el ecomarxismo, el feminismo de la reproducción social y la sorprendente popularidad en los Estados Unidos del
socialismo democrático.
Yeah. I'm saying that all of these ideas, which are so present for us now, are betoken, they are signaling a growing desire for integrative thinking and integrative practice.
Todas estas ideas están solicitando que nosotros integremos, tengamos un pensamiento íntegro y más cosmopolita, digamos, de estas visiones.
So my lecture is aimed at advancing that project of integrative thinking and practice. And I'm going to offer an account of capitalist society as the common matrix that generates the social divisions of gender, race, and class, as well as their intersections.
El proyecto busca avanzar este esfuerzo de interseccionalidad y definir a la sociedad capitalista como la matrix común del proyecto. Sí.
Yeah. I'm going to trace this process through the process by which gender, race, and class are generated in our society through the lens of labor, broadly understood.
Vamos a utilizar la lente del trabajo entendido en su sentido laxo para continuar.
I'll argue that capitalist society relies on three types of work. Not just exploited labor performed by free workers in exchange for wages in for-profit enterprises.
Argumentaré que la sociedad capitalista descansa en tres tipos de trabajo, no solamente el trabajo explotado, proveniente de trabajadores libres que trabajan por un salario y para organizaciones con fines de lucro.
But also what I'll call expropriated labor, unfree or dependent, coercively extracted from subjugated and usually racialized populations who've been subjected through conquest or debt.
Sino también del trabajo llamado expropiado, que proviene de comunidades racializadas, explotadas, subyugadas, y es un trabajo que no es libre o es dependiente.
Yeah. And finally, what I'm going to call domesticated labor, which is also known as care work or social reproduction work, which is chronically undervalued, often invisible, and constitutively gendered.
Y finalmente, el que llamaré trabajo domesticado o doméstico, que muchas veces es invisible o está infravalorado y es esencial para la reproducción social.
By tracing the relations among these three kinds of labor, I want to try to uncover some hidden ties between gender, race, and class, and possibly a path to a more coordinated emancipatory struggle.
Can you repeat that, please?
Should I go ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, let me just say that this is a long argument with many steps, and I'm only going to give you the first step here.
Esto es un argumento muy largo que va paso por paso. Vamos a comenzar con el primero.
And that consists in a structural argument which demonstrates that capitalist societies depend for internal systemic reasons on all three phases of labor working together. Structural argument.
El primer argumento es que el capitalismo depende estructuralmente en las tres caras del
Okay, so there are also historical arguments which are quite interesting and political arguments, but I won't present them here.
También hay argumentos históricos, pero esos no los vamos a presentar en esta conferencia.
Now, I'm going to begin with W.E.B. Du Bois, who inspired my line of thought.
Ahora vamos a empezar con W.E. Du Bois, que inspiró su línea de pensamiento.
His great book, Black Reconstruction, published in 1935, offered a major new interpretation of 19th century U.S. history.
Su libro, publicado en 1935, da una gran visión de lo que pasaba históricamente en Estados Unidos en el siglo XIX.
It's an interpretation centered on labor.
Es una interpretación que está basada en el trabajo.
Okay. Probably some of you know the book, but for those who don't, it covers the period from 1860 to 1880, which includes the U.S. Civil War, the formal abolition of slavery, post-war Reconstruction, and what Du Bois called the counter-revolution of property that reestablished Black subservience and white property rule.
Probablemente algunos de ustedes conocen el libro, pero el libro basa directamente sobre la esclavitud, la abolición de la misma y los problemas que vinieron después de esta.
For Du Bois, this was a major historical turning point. Fundamental questions about the country's future and, by extension, the future of capitalism more broadly were up for grabs.
Para Du Bois este fue un punto de quiebre histórico en donde
Fundamental questions up for grabs. Okay. The question for him was, what would result from the Civil War and Black Reconstruction? Would the result be what he called an abolition democracy, which would elevate labor, or would it be a plutocracy, which would elevate property? Those
La
were the two
pregunta aquí más importante era, después de la guerra civil en Estados Unidos, ¿qué es lo que iba a pasar y cuáles eran las dos vertientes más importantes que iba a haber con este resultado de la guerra?
Du Bois thought that so-called Black Reconstruction, which was the regime that was established in the South under Union military occupation, which tried to create racial equality, he thought, just one second, he thought that that regime prefigured a whole new way of organizing society.
Du Bois creía que la reconstrucción negra prefiguraba un nuevo paradigma para la sociedad.
But it didn't turn out that way. Now, this is a story in Du Bois about what might have been. But the analytic power of his account comes from his conception of labor.
Esto no fue así. El punto analítico viene de su concepción del trabajo.
In his view, the question of slavery, and it's so obvious once you say it, was a question of labor. And anti-slavery was at bottom a labor movement, one that aimed at emancipating unfree workers, not simply by legal proclamation, but also by transforming the property system and power relations that govern their work.
Para él, el movimiento abolicionista era un movimiento relacionado con el trabajo, buscando que el abolicionismo no se quedara solo en una proclamación legal, sino en una realidad.
For Du Bois, then, enslaved black labor belonged to the same conceptual political universe as free white labor, and the radical wings of anti-slavery and Reconstruction belonged in the same conceptual universe as trade unionism and socialism.
Para él, el trabajo esclavizado pertenecía a la misma burbuja conceptual del trabajo blanco realizado remuneradamente, y de esta manera el abolicionismo entraba en el mismo paradigma que el sindicalismo, por ejemplo.
In actuality, Du Bois concluded, the United States had two labor movements. They were separated by the way in which value was extracted from the two groups of workers, and thus by their status and color. But they were two labor movements.
En realidad, en Estados Unidos había dos movimientos obreros, separados por clase y raza, sin embargo unidos por una similitud conceptual.
Had these two movements recognized one another and joined forces, they might have changed the course of U.S. history and that of global capitalism.
Si estos dos movimientos se hubieran juntado, la historia después de estos y de lo que pasó con los sindicatos hubiera sido muy diferente.
What is so revelatory, I think, about this book is that it broadens our view of what counts as labor and what counts as a labor movement.
Lo que es muy sorprendente de este libro es lo que nos da la pauta del significado que cuenta como trabajo y que cuenta como movimiento del trabajo.
And this image of two labor movements failing to recognize one another, and which for him meant the lost chance for an inclusive pro-working class front.
Y el hecho de que estos dos movimientos que no hayan sido reconocidos el uno del otro hace que haya habido una oportunidad perdida de que se hubieran juntado o de que se hubieran unido y hubieran sido mucho más fuertes y una historia distinta.
Appreciating that capitalist labor assumes more than one form, such a broad, inclusive front would have to recognize and embrace more than one labor movement. If it didn't, it would lack the political strength and the breadth of vision to defeat plutocracy and expand democracy.
Tomando en cuenta que los movimientos sociales tenían un mismo objetivo, el hecho de que no se reconocieran los unos con los otros no tomó la fuerza política suficiente para que pudieran ser el mismo y pudieran avanzar en continuidad hacia la democracia.
So what has inspired me here is this idea of more than one kind of labor, more than one kind of labor movement.
Lo que me inspiró aquí es esta idea de más de uno, más de un movimiento obrero, más de un movimiento social.
As I read him, Du Bois was not seeking to homogenize the concept of labor, not to try to dissolve its internal differentiations and divisions.
Al leerlo, Du Bois no intentaba homogeneizar el trabajo, sino disolver las divisiones internas en el concepto.
Rather, he understood free and enslaved labor as distinct but structurally linked aspects of one single social system.
Más bien reconocía al trabajo esclavo y al trabajo libre como distintos pero interrelacionados elementos de un sistema estructural.
Enslaved black workers, he argued, were among the, I'm quoting, founding stones of a new industrial phase of capitalism.
Los trabajadores esclavos fueron la piedra angular para una nueva etapa del capitalismo.
Producing cotton for mills throughout the North Atlantic, they kept those enterprises humming, supplying raw materials for their free counterparts to work up as commodities.
Produciendo materiales para los molinos en el norte del Atlántico, continuaban proveyendo las materias primas para la producción de bienes.
Framing the whole process globally, Du Bois situated enslaved workers in the U.S. South and more broadly in the Caribbean and so on, and in Latin America. He situated them, and here I'm quoting, within a dark and vast sea of human labor in China and India, the South Seas, and all Africa, in the West Indies and Central America, and in the United States, that great majority of mankind on whose bent and broken backs rest today the founding stones of modern industry.
Du Bois enmarcó esto globalmente, no solamente con los trabajadores esclavos del sur de los Estados Unidos, sino también en Sudamérica, en China, y de esta manera lo estableció como un oscuro mar de labor humana. Sobre las espaldas de estos trabajadores se estableció la piedra angular de la sociedad capitalista moderna.
It's a very powerful vision, and it cries out to be read alongside Karl Marx's identification of the doubly free proletariat as the true creator of industrialism's marvels and as the system's eventual gravedigger.
Es una visión muy poderosa y también se puede leer junto con la visión de Marx que tenía sobre el socialismo, sobre el capitalismo y sobre las fuerzas conjuntas.
Right. Where Marx gave pride of place to free but propertyless workers, forcibly separated from the means of subsistence and compelled to sell their labor power in exchange for wages, Du Bois is foregrounding the unfree workers whose labor power is not theirs to sell, but the property of others to be commanded by the lash.
Mientras que Marx establecía a los trabajadores separados de los medios de producción, Du Bois contemplaba también a los trabajadores que no tenían la capacidad de vender su fuerza de trabajo.
In calling these enslaved workers the founding stones of the world capitalist system, he is diving beneath Marx's hidden abode of factory production to an even more hidden realm on which the factory rests.
Al considerar a los trabajadores esclavos como la piedra angular de la sociedad capitalista, Du Bois está yendo más abajo del concepto del trabajador industrial y entrando en territorios más desconocidos.
It's the relationship between those two realms, the factory and the plantation, that is all important.
Es la relación entre estos dos elementos, la fábrica y la plantación, que es lo más importante.
Du Bois's point is that black expropriation undergirds white exploitation.
El punto de Du Bois es que la explotación esclava es la que pone las bases para la explotación de los trabajadores
That the
asalariados.
two processes are tightly linked and that the fates of the two groups of workers are tied together.
Los destinos de estos trabajadores están unidos.
That neither group can be emancipated without the other. That two labor movements must join forces to abolish the system that generates their perverse symbiosis.
Ninguno de los dos movimientos puede ser emancipado por sí solo. Ambos necesitan el uno del otro para destronar esta simbiosis terrible.
Now, I think this idea, although he's writing about the mid-19th century, remains absolutely relevant today. As Du Bois noted, the abolition of slavery in the U.S. and elsewhere did not put an end to unfree expropriated labor in the capitalist world system.
Esto permanece muy relevante el día de hoy, aunque es una idea del siglo XIX, toda vez que la abolición de la esclavitud realmente no ha terminado con el trabajo gratuito, digamos, en el siglo XXI.
To this day, bonded and dependent labor continues in a variety of different guises. We could talk about migrant workers who, because they are deportable, can be coerced and are not free workers.
La labor dependiente continúa al día de hoy, por ejemplo, con los trabajadores migrantes que, toda vez que son deportables, permanecen bajo un estado de coerción en su estado de trabajadores.
And this dependent labor is still strongly racially marked.
Y esta labor dependiente todavía es muy racialmente marcada.
Might we not then view the anti-racist and anti-imperialist struggles of our own time too as unrecognized labor struggles?
Inclusive podríamos mencionar a las luchas antiimperialistas del día de hoy como también movimientos obreros.
But if so, why stop there? Why not view feminist movements too as unacknowledged struggles over work in systems that are built on a gendered separation of so-called productive labor from care work?
Pero si es así, ¿por qué no incluir también al feminismo, el cual lucha contra una...
El feminismo que lucha contra llamarlo solo cuidadores en lugar de trabajo remunerado.
Yeah. Isn't that division, productive versus reproductive labor, as fundamental, as integral to capitalist society as the one Du Bois identified between expropriated and exploited labor?
¿No es esta la división que también se hacía sobre trabajo reproductivo y trabajo productivo, así como Du Bois hacía la diferenciación entre el trabajo gratuito y el trabajo pagado?
And if struggles to abolish prisons and defund the police, to resist ethnic cleansing and land grabs, or at least in part labor struggles, as I think they are, why not say the same about Me Too, whose chief objective, after all, is to rid the workplace of abuses of power in the form of sexual harassment, coercion, and assault?
Y si las luchas para retirar los fondos a la policía y los movimientos que protegen el despojo de tierras, ¿por qué son incluidos también, al menos como parcialmente, movimientos obreros? ¿Por qué no también pensar en el movimiento Me Too, que considera el acoso laboral como un elemento obrero también?
Why not view campaigns for family leave, childcare, elder care, health care, housing, and pensions as struggles to prioritize activities that nurture people over those designed to rack up profits?
¿Por qué no ver el cuidado de menores de edad, de mayores de edad y demás movimientos sociales como elementos que también permiten a la sociedad capitalista generar ganancias mediante el cuidado de los trabajadores?
Why not view campaigns for reproductive justice, including abortion access, as struggles over the conditions of reproductive work, over the status of those who perform it?
¿Por qué no ver a las luchas de reproducción social, por ejemplo, el acceso al aborto, como también movimientos relacionados con el trabajo?
And finally, why not view campaigns for the rights of migrants and domestic workers, and for the unionization of nurses, health aides, teachers, office cleaners, cooks, servers, laundry workers? Why not view all of those as struggles to revalue social reproductive labor and to empower those who perform it?
Y finalmente, ¿por qué no ver las luchas de las personas migrantes, las luchas de los trabajadores domésticos y demás sindicalizaciones de grupos de trabajadores como lo son los enfermeros, los doctores, los maestros, como elementos también de movimientos sociales relacionados con el trabajo?
In other words, why not see this work too as a founding stone of the global capitalist system, supplying the owners with labor, both exploitable and expropriable?
¿Por qué no ver todo esto como un bloque, la piedra fundacional de la sociedad capitalista que le provee a los dueños de los medios de producción elementos para continuar produciendo?
So you see, I'm extending Du Bois's argument by proposing to view capitalist societies as relying on three analytically distinct but mutually imbricated forms of labor: exploited, expropriated, and domesticated.
Por eso estoy extendiendo el argumento de Du Bois, contemplando los tres elementos que mencionamos el día de hoy como elementos que son la piedra fundacional del capitalismo. No solamente el trabajo remunerado, sino también el trabajo esclavo y el trabajo de reproducción social.
It's the relations among these three phases of labor, I'm claiming, that form the hidden ties among gender, race, and class in our societies. So I'm endorsing Du Bois's political point while also expanding it.
Son las relaciones entre estos tres elementos lo que constituye los lazos ocultos entre el género, la raza y la clase.
Our current aim, I'm saying, should be to grasp the relations among not two, but three labor movements, and to evaluate the prospects for uniting them. And I'm calling this project Du Bois +1.
Nuestra mira debería ser considerar estos tres elementos y buscar unificarlos para constituir un frente común. Ella le llama esto Du Bois +1.
I'm thinking that with the consecutive translation, this is going to go on too long, so I'm going to try to shorten what I have to say here and skip ahead. What's that? It won't be as beautifully structured, but okay. So let me just say, first of all, that free wage labor, the so-called doubly free labor, is obviously no picnic. Those who perform it are exploited. They're paid only for their necessary labor time, while the surplus value they create accrues to the capitalists. That's straight Marx.
Déjenme decirle
And I
que
think it's right.
Perdón,
Sorry.
déjenme decirle que aquellos que llaman trabajo gratis, realmente no es un trabajo gratis o no remunerado, sino que es un trabajo que no se paga correctamente, es un trabajo que es precarizado y realmente las necesidades, se cubren ni siquiera las necesidades básicas de lo que se debería cubrir en este trabajo. Y todo lo demás va hacia el capitalismo.
Nevertheless, exploited labor, even though that's what comes to mind when we hear the word labor, is only the tip of the iceberg in capitalist society.
Sin embargo, este tipo de trabajo, aunque lo tengamos muy en cuenta y es muy llamado, es solo la punta del iceberg en lo que tenemos en cuanto a trabajo.
Beneath it lie two other kinds of labor: First, what I'm calling expropriated labor, which is close to what Du Bois called dark labor.
Debajo de esto está también lo que yo le llamo la labor expropiada, lo que Du Bois conocía como labor obscura.
And second, what I'm calling domesticated labor, which is close to what feminists now call care work.
Y segundo, hablamos de la labor doméstica, que es lo que las feministas llaman labor de cuidados.
Expropriated and domesticated labor are both forms of shadow work. They are intrinsic to capitalist society, entangled with exploited labor, but overshadowed by it.
Ambas son formas de trabajo fantasma, ambas están interrelacionadas con la sociedad capitalista, pero son eclipsadas por esta.
They are founding stones in Du Bois's sense, necessary conditions for exploited labor, co-original with it, and therefore indispensable elements of the larger societal complex in which exploited labor is constituted as profitable and productive. Sorry, that's a complicated sentence.
Son elementos, son piedras fundacionales como las concebía Du Bois y, sorry,
Necessary, linked up, et
y
cetera,
están
et cetera. Okay.
necesariamente relacionadas y tienen un origen común también.
And it's also to say that their crucial role in this capitalist complex is systematically under-recognized and undervalued when it is not disavowed altogether.
Su rol está sistemáticamente infravalorado.
Expropriated and domesticated labor are just as intrinsic to capitalism as exploited labor. Combined with each other and with the latter, they form three interlocking pillars of one social system.
Los tres elementos son tan intrínsecos al capitalismo que forman los tres pilares de este sistema.
Okay, let me elaborate a little bit more on each of these two forms of shadow labor. First, expropriated labor, as I said, is unfree or dependent labor. It's unwaged or underwaged, coercively extracted from subjugated populations.
La labor fantasma o la labor coercionada es obtenida de poblaciones subyugadas.
In one sense, it's as old as the hills. We find it throughout human history in one guise or another, in ancient empires and feudal societies, long before the rise of capitalism.
Esto ha venido pasando en la sociedad desde muchísimo antes que tuviéramos el capitalismo. Lo hemos peleado desde que se crearon las comunidades.
And so it's sometimes been considered residual, an archaic vestige of something old, which will disappear as soon as capitalism matures.
Y a su vez esto se ha considerado como algo residual o algo arcaico que cuando el capitalismo madure va a desaparecer.
But it doesn't. We find dependent, underwaged labor even now in prisons, brothels, sweatshops, plantations, slaughterhouses, mines, favelas, as well as in industries that employ migrants, especially migrants without papers.
Pero no es así. Nosotros encontramos que el trabajo marginado o que el trabajo mal pagado lo encontramos ahora incluso en las prisiones, en las favelas, en las minas, en todo este tipo de situaciones que tenemos en el siglo XXI.
Now, as Du Bois maintained, the distinction between free and dependent labor corresponds to the global color line, and that holds today as well.
Como Du Bois decía, la distinción entre estos tipos de trabajo corresponde a la línea de color, como la establecía.
Who else are the expropriated but, reminding you of that quote, that dark and vast sea of labor on whose bent and broken backs rest all the marvels of our society?
¿Quién más podría ser las personas a las que se les expropiaba esta labor sino a ese oscuro mar de trabajo?
By dividing free from unfree labor, this system constitutes two distinct categories of persons, one suitable for mere exploitation, the other destined for brute expropriation.
Al dividir a las personas en estas dos categorías, se establece que un lado es susceptible de la simple explotación y el otro lado la explotación bruta.
That distinction is, let's say, epidermalized, like made manifest on the skin, right, in terms of color.
Esa distinción se manifiesta en la piel en términos de color.
It inscribes race as a structural fault line in our society and implants in our society a host of structural injustices: racial oppression, imperialism, settler colonial apartheid, indigenous dispossession, and genocide.
Esta división
Esta división nos vincula o vincula a las personas con este tipo de color al racismo e incluso al genocidio.
The common thread in all of those cases, I think, is the idea of political exposure. In other words, the people in question that we're talking about here, their capacity to set limits and invoke protections has been taken from them.
El hilo conductor o el hilo principal de todas estas personas que tienen en común es su capacidad para poder poner límites y su capacidad de poder protegerse de sí mismos o protegerse de la sociedad.
So this condition of being defenseless, open to violation, that, in my view, is the core meaning of racial oppression.
Esta condición de no estar o no poder defenderse es el significado fundamental de este concepto que yo llamo opresión.
Okay. So once it's racialized, of course, expropriated labor is set up as servile, menial, degraded animal toil, inferior to work that is merely exploited.
Esta labor es establecida como
Servile, degraded,
servil, degradante y
inferior to exploited.
inferior para la explotación.
Yeah, and however bad exploited work is, expropriated work is and must be worse.
El trabajo expropiado es y debe ser peor que la labor.
And so I call it subwork. And I'm saying that the expropriated subwork of racialized others, many of whom are not even recognized as workers, is a necessary background condition for the exploited labor of capitalism's iconic workers.
El trabajador expropiado es un trasfondo necesario para entender al trabajador entendido en términos comunes.
In all of this, I'm building on Du Bois, but now I want to say he's not going far enough, because it's not true that the whole system rests on this one two-tiered division. These two tiers are linked up and entangled with a third tier, which I'm calling domesticated labor.
Estoy ampliando la teoría de Du Bois, pero no creo que llegue lo suficientemente lejos, toda vez que esto no descansa solamente en estas dos categorías que él reconoce, sino que también en una tercera, la que yo llamo trabajo doméstico.
Now, I need to say something about this word I'm using. I hope that the Spanish translation is capturing this. I'm not saying domestic labor. I'm saying domesticated labor. And the reason is that I want to keep the historic association of this work with residential family spaces that are set apart from factories, but I want to acknowledge that it's performed in many locales outside of private homes.
Quiero establecer que esto no solamente ocurre en los hogares que están lejos de las fábricas, sino también en muchos lugares afuera de estos hogares.
To call it domesticated instead of domestic is to say that it has been tamed, historically constituted as a form of shadow work, as the devalued reproductive other of so-called productive labor.
Al llamarlo domesticado y no doméstico, como hizo la corrección también hace un momento, establecemos que que ha sido domado, en ciertas palabras, ¿no? Y
I mean, the point is, I want the word to be negative. It's what capitalism is doing to this work and to the people who perform it. Just like it exploits some and expropriates others, so in this case, it domesticates the work and the people. It's a deformation.
es una deformación que quiere que suene a que la labor ha sido domesticada, y para evidenciar el problema con esta situación.
Capitalism's signature separation of production from reproductive labor implants a deep gender division within society, just like its constitutive separation of exploited from expropriated labor implants race.
La separación que hace el capitalismo del trabajo productivo, del reproductivo, es la misma separación que se hace del trabajo de explotación y del trabajo de expropiación. Uno habla sobre el género y el último, habla sobre la raza.
And this binarism, this gender binarism, affects everyone, women and men, cis and trans, gay, straight, and queer, while of course casting non-cis, non-straight, non-binary people as anomalous outside the pale.
Y esta división no solo afecta a las mujeres, afecta a los hombres, a las mujeres, a la comunidad homosexual, a la comunidad transexual, a la comunidad no binaria que se encuentra afuera y como nómada dentro de estas categorías y de estos conceptos.
In addition, capitalism splinters domestic labor internally.
Adicionalmente, el capitalismo lesiona esta labor domesticada internamente.
The system, as I noted, needs more than one kind of labor power, not just exploitable labor power, but also expropriatable labor power.
El sistema necesita no solo la labor
Domesticated labor produces both of those types, but in two different ways.
la labor domesticada produce ambos de estos, pero en dos tipos diferentes.
When it's a matter of replenishing exploitable or producing exploitable citizen workers, it's performed in households or in social state institutions or increasingly in for-profit firms.
La reposición de los trabajadores se realiza tanto en lugares privados como en firmas públicas.
But when domesticated labor is devoted to sustaining expropriable others, it's performed in slave quarters and migrant work camps, in ghettos, on reservations, in internment and refugee camps, in favelas and open-air prisons.
Pero en cambio el trabajo domesticado, cuando se trata de poder dar levante, digamos, al trabajo bien pagado, se realiza en prisiones, en guetos, en favelas, en campos militarizados y todos estos tipos de situaciones.
So this labor is doubly disavowed. It's tucked away out of sight, the shadow of a shadow.
Ese trabajo no solo es una sombra, sino que es la sombra de la sombra.
And yet, it too is socially necessary, because if capitalism requires racialized sub-work, it also requires gendered, racialized sub-care work.
Y es necesario de todas maneras en el capitalismo, porque si el capitalismo necesita un trabajo que es dividido por raza, también necesita un trabajo subdividido por género.
The two forms of shadow work are both very cheap for capital, but they differ importantly from one another.
Estas dos formas de trabajo son muy baratas para el capitalismo, pero tienen diferencias una de otra.
One form is stigmatized by way of race, while the other is sentimentalized by way of gender.
Una forma está estigmatizada por la raza y la otra sentimentalizada por el género.
Subwork, that's the expropriated work, is bestialized and degraded, toil unbefitting a human being, which is why it is looked away from and kept at a distance.
El subtrabajo se ha bestializado y es por eso que se mantiene a una distancia.
Domesticated care work, by contrast, is up close and personal, viewed through the lens of love or natural instinct, as opposed to labor, often romanticized in culture, although dishonored in practice.
El trabajo domesticado, sin embargo, se ve desde una lente sentimental como el amor y se mantiene cerca. Sin embargo,
The traits associated then with the two sets of shadow workers are not the same. Care workers should be creatures of feeling, exquisitely sensitive to others' needs, which they should prioritize over their own.
Es por eso que los dos tipos de trabajadores fantasma no son iguales. Los trabajadores domesticados tienen que ser exquisitamente sentimentales.
while sub-workers should be thick-skinned, dumb beasts of burden who can take punches and endure pain.
Mientras que los trabajadores expropiados deben de ser capaces de tolerar el dolor y recibir golpes.
So the two groups of shadow workers are differently constructed, and those among whom the system finds no use do not belong to the same reserve army of labor.
Así que ambos trabajadores fantasmas se constituyen de manera diferente y aquellos que no se encuentran en ninguno de estos grupos, el sistema no tiene uso para ellos.
If we talk about the shadow of a shadow, the sub-care workers, they are still different yet again, because they should be finely attuned to the needs of those they care for, like care workers, but like sub-workers, they should be thick-skinned, endured to callous disregard of their own needs by bosses or masters.
Volviendo a la idea de la sombra de la sombra, los trabajadores domesticados no solamente tienen que estar cercanos a las necesidades de aquellos que cuidan, sino también tienen que ser resilientes al abuso de sus maestros.
So here, in the capitalist organization of labor, I'm suggesting, we see the social basis of at least one form of intersectionality.
Aquí sugiero que veamos la base social de por lo menos una de estas formas,
which has been insightfully discussed by feminists of color. But there are also other forms of intersectionality, but which for reasons of time, I'm going to skip. The key point, let me get to my conclusion. The key point is that these categorizations, gender, race, and class, are systemic, as are the faces of labor to which they are tied.
El objetivo principal de esta plática es decir que estas categorizaciones son sistémicas tanto de raza como de clase.
Race and gender divides have structural bases in capitalist societies, as do empire and class.
Las segmentaciones de género tienen los mismos escalones que las segmentaciones de raza.
Yeah. Each member of this gender, race, class triad derives its social meaning and its political force from its linkage with the others.
Cada miembro de estos tres elementos obtiene su poder político de su interrelación con los otros.
All three are co-constituted within one social system, which forms the three faces of labor and deforms the three sets of workers.
Los tres están co-constituidos en un elemento que conforma las tres caras del trabajo y también deforma a los tres tipos de trabajadores.
And now, finally, I'm getting to the most important theoretical and practical point.
Finalmente
Here it
llego al
comes.
punto más importante, teórico y
Yeah.
práctico.
Conventional understandings of the working class are misleading.
El entendimiento convencional de la clase obrera es engañoso.
Analytically speaking, race and gender are not alternatives to class, but structurally grounded divisions within it.
Analíticamente, la raza y el género no son subdivisiones de la clase, sino elementos que la conforman.
And struggles against gender and racial oppression can plausibly be understood as unrecognized labor struggles.
Y los esfuerzos en contra de la opresión de género y de raza pueden ser entendidos también como esfuerzos en contra de la opresión trabajadora.
There's a lot more to be said about this, which I don't have time for here, but I hope I've said enough to convince you that Du Bois was onto something important.
Hay mucho más que platicar, pero por cuestiones de tiempo no lo vamos a platicar aquí. Sin embargo, espero que les haya convencido de una cosa, y esto es de que Du Bois estaba a punto de hacer algo importante.
Capitalist society relies on more than one face of labor and precipitates more than one type of labor movement.
La sociedad capitalista tiene más de una forma de trabajo y necesita más de una forma de trabajador.
That perspective has since been enriched and complicated by feminist analyses of gendered care work and social reproduction.
Esa visión ha sido enriquecida por las visiones feministas, por las visiones de cuidadores y de cuidados.
By combining feminist insights with those of Du Bois, I've suggested that capitalist societies give rise, for non-accidental reasons, to a system-specific nexus of not two but three faces of labor.
Es por eso que la relación entre estas tres caras da lugar a la estructura de la sociedad capitalista.
The effect is to uncover some hidden ties among gender, race, and class, and to deepen the conceptual force of the term intersectionality and to advance its political project.
El efecto es encontrar los lazos ocultos, darle más poder a la palabra interseccionalidad y avanzar en nuestro proyecto social.
That project, as I view it here, is to build a counter-hegemonic political bloc that embraces the concerns of three labor movements and fosters greater coordination among them.
Ese proyecto es construir un bloque contrahegemónico que incluya estos tres elementos y sea la oposición política a la
Nothing
opresión.
less will suffice to defeat Trumpism and transform the social system that oppresses us all.
Nada menos sería necesario.
En este momento, la doctora Sonia Venegas Álvarez hará entrega de un reconocimiento y una medalla. Perfecto.
Dear Nancy, it was a very, very interesting lecture. Before we continue, I want to let you know that we have 3 full auditoriums hearing to your lecture. That means about 700 people and others following us in social media. Yes. Quisiera preguntar a nuestras invitadas si tienen algún comentario. Por favor, doctora Neris.
Muchas gracias. Hola a todas y todos. A ver, espérame. Okay. I'm going to be very brief. This is like a bummer because after listening to you, what else can I say? However, well, here I go. Profesora Nancy Fraser, bienvenida a nuestra universidad. I am truly honored to be here, and my deep gratitude goes to Doctora Sonia Venegas and the law school for including me in this panel alongside such esteemed colleagues. I must confess that I'm here as a double agent. On the one hand, as director of UNAM's Center for Research and Gender Studies, and on the other, as a feminist political theorist. Critical, sharp, challenging, and politically committed are some of the words that best describe Nancy Fraser's work. For many years, she has simultaneously engaged in an ample critique of capitalism, as well as in its more intricate and hidden elements. It is within these elements that, thanks to a long tradition of feminist political thought, we can understand the mechanisms that allow for the swiftly reproduction of what Fraser calls as exploited labor. No, it's extra... No, ¿cómo es? Expropriative labor, dispossessed labor, and domesticated labor. More recently, Fraser has drawn attention to the current crisis of hegemony, in which the notion of what she calls progressive neoliberalism has met with defeat. Trump's first and second administrations, with his reactionary populism, are the epitome of this crisis. This situation intensifies already existing injustices in the world that are rooted in sexism, racism, classism, colonialism, and all kinds of phobias. Yet, according to Fraser, the formation of a new hegemony is still to come. We remain with the decaying one. Fraser leaves no stone unturned with her critique of certain feminism that has been subservient to capitalism in all its forms. The great culprit, liberal feminism, with its leaning logics, pragmatism, and erasure of structures, hinders the possibilities for transformative political action and for all forms of community making. Alongside other authors, Fraser is concerned with providing elements for an internal critique of feminism in at least two key aspects. First, regarding its capacity to get commodified by the demands of capital, and second, about its sectarianism and unwillingness to engage in strategic coalitions. Latin American feminist scholarship has critically engaged with Fraser's work, and in particular with her take on the overall state of capital. We understand that some of its implications are context-bound, while others have widespread applicability. In this sense, I would like to bring to the table the lessons that feminist and women-led mobilizations have taught us in the past few years, with the hope that this allows for a more fruitful dialogue. Led by rage, pain, and bravery, women and feminists in Mexico and in this university have taken on the streets and classrooms to demand a halt on violence, feminicide, precarity, as well as free access to reproductive rights and health. The uprising encompasses a plurality of voices, experiences, and ideological positions, as well as a variety of strategies that go from burning buildings to artistic interventions that not always see eye to eye with each other. Yet, for example, in 2020, the feminists were able to change the university legislation to now include gender violence as a serious offense. It didn't happen before. And in regards to abortion laws, their strategy, in coalition with other political forces, has proven quite successful. And as of 2026, abortion is legal in most of the country. These feminisms are worth looking at without romanticizing them. They have a lot to say about anti-racist and anti-capitalist formations, coalitions, gender norms, as well as new forms of justice and exchange. In this very brief note, I have offered you all, I hope, just a small sample of Fraser's conceptual constellations. There are many more, so I suggest that if you haven't, please go and read her books and articles. We have many at CX Library, by the way. Professor Fraser, thank you so much for joining us today at UNAM. Your work has inspired and continues to inspire students, scholars, and activists alike. Muchas gracias.
Professor Fraser, can we have some questions from the audience?
No, doctora, yo voy.
Hi, Professor. Thank you for your conference. I just wanted to make your question more on the means, on the praxis of carrying out this united struggle against class, the class struggle, So you made the argument we have to unite the fronts of domesticated, exploited, and expropriated labor. We have to treat them all of the same kind of struggle against oppression. But there's an ideology, as Marx said, that sustains, intellectually the current means of production. And we see this, this ideology when workers unite not against imperialists or capitalists or even, their spouses, but, against other workers. So how are we supposed to unite with workers who don't even recognize themselves as exploited, expropriated, or domesticated workers? How do you bridge this gap with these alienated workers?
Okay. Thank you very much for the question. It's a great question, and it is one that what I've given you is a small piece of a chapter of a book that I'm working on. There's another chapter on exactly this question, because when I said what I'm giving you now is a structural argument, what I meant was I'm talking about how the three faces are functionally entwined. But the question of the self-awareness, the self-understandings, the political meanings, that's a different level of analysis. And what I'm trying to capture is that it's a system that creates, in a structural way, these divisions. And that, in a way, creates a very fertile ground for misrecognition. It sort of suggests that it's not just that capitalists practice divide and rule, which they do. It's also that the system itself treats some forms of labor as almost invisible, and it encourages self-misrecognition and inter-misrecognition among the groups of workers. So I'm trying to develop a whole historical account of how those misrecognitions arise and under what conditions they can be overcome. Because Du Bois believed that white US American workers had more to gain by allying with newly freed black slaves than they did by allying with white propertied rule. I believe that's right for our time too, that there's something to be gained. But the fact that it's, rationally correct doesn't mean that people actually follow that path. So I mean, in a whole nother level of analysis of the toxic forms of misrecognition, and then here you have to look at the way that figures like Trump and others around the world do deliberately and cynically and disgustingly, right, inflame those divisions. That is such an important part of the landscape today, because the formerly privileged exploited workers, merely exploited workers, their own lives are deteriorating badly. You might think, they might see some commonalities. But oh no, this sense of losing, so you get the scapegoating. They're eating our cats and dogs, to just use a facetious example, but everything that implies. So this requires a whole nother level of analysis, I agree.
Perdón, lo voy a hacer en español. Recientemente, la Corte Interamericana de Derechos Humanos reconoce el cuidado como un derecho humano y hace un análisis del cuidado y el trabajo. Y ahí precisamente habla del trabajo remunerado y el trabajo no remunerado, haciendo un análisis precisamente del género. cómo el trabajo no remunerado precisamente está transversalizado por el género, pero también por la raza, ¿no? ¿Quiénes son las que cuidan? Normalmente mujeres racializadas. Mi pregunta es, ¿cuál es el papel del derecho, no solo de los movimientos sociales que tienen que tener este frente común, considerarse como clase trabajadora, estas mujeres que cuidan, considerarse como clase trabajadora y mover al derecho, pero el derecho en sí mismo, ¿cómo tendría que hacer esa transversalización precisamente para criticar estos sistemas de explotación y no solo incorporarlos como un trabajo más, un trabajo sombra de los tantos que ya hay y que son explotados?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for the question and for the translation. I really appreciate that. I mean, I think you're right that there is a new visibility today to this whole problem of what was shadowed care work. We're now much more aware of it, and it is thanks to feminist agitation, as well as to the struggles of people who perform this work for dignity and for a living wage. So that's very important, but I think the other trend is increased commodification of this. So economists used to think that care work, social reproduction work, could not be scaled up industrially on to make it really profitable because it's too labor intensive, you can't mechanize it and so on and so forth. But guess what? In the current neoliberal context, hedge funds and all kinds of financial institutions have found ways to financialize nursing homes and the like. So this is becoming a very important face. The character of how this work is done and where and under what conditions, under the direct control of a mistress or under a corporate, right, predatory corporate structure. This changes historically. And I think that that is, if you combine that with the feminist agitation around care work, the making it visible, with the rise and now I would say threat to social democratic state provision of care, of social reproduction. Put those three things together and you got a sort of perfect storm for this to become very politicized. And that is what is happening. And this is why I think today that struggles over care work are among the most militant leading edge of labor struggles in our time. It's not the automobile workers and the steel workers. I mean, yes, they should strike and so on. But this is, social reproduction is the leading face of militant labor struggle in our time. And I think feminists should own that and say, yes, we're a labor movement too, and we are absolutely socially necessary, and you can't treat us like this.
Hi, I'm Agni Garduño here. Dr. Fraser, hi. Hello. Well, first of all, thanks for this great presentation. First, I will say this in English, and after that, I will translate it into Spanish, okay? So the question is, how can we create counter-hegemony when capitalism ideology is so seductive and alluring and has multiple faces within society, such as middle-class mentality and subjectivity, exploitation and survival conditions that are a common thing here in Latin America and the Caribbean? And on the other hand, how can we create this counter-hegemony when academia is elitizing all of the, well, in a lot of aspects. And unfortunately, that's a reality here in Mexico. So these are my two questions, and in Spanish are, ¿cómo podemos crear esta contrahegemonía cuando la ideología del capitalismo es tan seductora y tiene muchísimas facetas, como el tema de la subjetividad de la clase media, la situación entre la explotación y la supervivencia, y por otro lado, cómo crear esta contrahegemonía sin academizar tanto estos espacios y estas luchas sociales, que desgraciadamente es un aspecto que sucede bastante aquí en América Latina. Thank you so much. Gracias.
Thank you. Good questions, very good questions. When you say how can people sort of disaffiliate from a system that is offering them such alluring temptations, you can't convince people rationally. Quoting Jürgen Habermas in a different context, social reality has to meet you halfway, meaning crisis. People have to be fed up. This is not going to happen when everybody's happy and spellbound by the glittering commodities that they see. No, it happens when they know that their children's lives are going to be worse than theirs. It happens when they can't afford housing and they have to live with their parents until they're 40, 50 years old. It happens when there are no stable careers, but everybody is doing gig work and not having any idea of how you can build a long-range life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When where their live is being destroyed every year by wildfires or by floods. Those are the conditions, and we live in those conditions. These are the conditions in which people can, in theory, disaffiliate. That's not the problem. The problem is not disaffiliation. The problem is something else. It's that what happens when they disaffiliate? Do they go one way or do they go another way? Well, too many of them go a very bad way. And that's because we haven't managed to build really convincing and what's the word, sort of narratives, that can stand up to those of Trump, that to say, you're right to be angry, you do have grievances, but the idea that your problems are caused by Mexican rapists invading, this is crap. Here's another story about why this is happening to you. We haven't succeeded in getting that out, although I'm a New Yorker and I have a mayor now who speaks for me. So maybe there's some changes in the wind. We'll see.
Thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes. Yo quiero saber, además de que el trabajo de cuidados está sostenido en los sentimientos y en lo romántico, ¿de qué forma opera la violencia como un elemento que sostiene la domesticación del trabajo reproductivo y de cuidados? Muchas gracias.
Yeah, this is really it shows you something about the contradictions of why I'm, and this is part of what I mean by domesticated. It's, on the one hand, it's supposed to be all about feeling and caring and love, the sentimental side of it. And under other conditions, those aspects of it would be very positive and rewarding emotionally and socially. But the conditions under which this work is performed today in our society, in those for-profit nursing homes, and in in upper middle class or the homes of the 10%, let's say in Hollywood, with performed by racialized women without papers, who are essentially prisoners because they can't go anywhere. They've got ice breathing down their neck and so on. Of course, these things are all mixed up together. And yet, somehow, people make sense of these things. They manage actually to feel some love or affection for the children they take care of, but it's a complete mess of contradictions.
Thank you. Well, thanks for such an enlightening presentation. I wanted to ask, it's probably my professional deformation, but I do think there's a growing movement for progressive taxation around the world. Denmark, Brazil, Spain, Colombia, even in Mexico there was just an initiative presented yesterday. And I wanted to ask you if you see in this taxing the rich an tool for these intersected labor movements to demand or to begin a process of demand that can be made possible and real in the short term to counter the oppression and the system as a whole that oppresses us. Thank you.
Right. Well, can I maybe answer that by coming back to Zoran Mamdani? Because it's really interesting to think about what kind of socialism this is, if indeed that's the right word for it. Sorry. What kind of socialism this is. I would call it social reproduction socialism, because what are his main things? Free buses, free and universal child care for very young children, and what was the third thing? Freezing the rents. Okay, so this is all social reproduction, right? Transportation, housing, child care. He did talk during the campaign about a wealth tax. That's not, you're not hearing anything about that now. And so I think that the side of revenues that's the shadow side now. The social reproduction side is very visible, but are you going to pay for this by redistributing the money among the expanded working class, or are you going to touch capital? That's the crucial question for all of these forms of socialism. The other thing, there's not much talk about wages. That's the other side of labor and social reproduction. All of these people work. You can't, affordability is not just about making social provision goods free or cheaper. It's also about raising people's wages. That's not being talked about. So I'm a big supporter of Mamdani. I think he's made a big advance in a way beyond Bernie Sanders by linking the sort of broad shared interest, shared class interest in affordability with the celebration of New York's immigrant diversity as a strong punchback against Trump and ICE. This is, he's put together in a certain way at the imaginary level, this Du Bois idea. It's one class, but it's internally differentiated. I love this idea. But there are some, I don't think there are blind spots. He knows what he's doing. But there's some strategic silences, let's say, for the moment.
Hey, sorry, I have the microphone. First of all, thank you for your listening and thank you for your books, especially the Manifest Feminist for the 99%. It has been really important for me. I'm doing my thesis on my master's thesis on a feminist criticism of neoliberalism and how the commodification on women's bodies operates. I am particularly interested in the issue of surrogacy, and I know you have a critical position in this regard, surrogacy. But I would like to know what you think about phenomena such as labiaplasty, or the cosmetic surgery of the labia minora, in the understanding that it's a sex-related issue, or a sex-related issue, or a neoliberalism issue. I would like to know what you think about it.
You're talking in part about female genital mutilation, which is a crime against humanity. It's a violence. It's horrible. And of course, we know that the idea of sort of, capital-funded foundations swooping in and saying, stop doing this, is not the best way to deal with people for whom, in some cases, it's part of their identity. But that's a clear case. Can I just say, though, if we were talking about the commodification of women's bodies, I'm really struck right now by a phrase that a U.S. congressman whom I like a lot named Ro Khanna, who oddly represents Silicon Valley but is a big Bernie Sanders guy. He coined the phrase, the Epstein class. That's a really powerful phrase because it links this whole position of, elite, connections that all these guys are completely involved in, doing favors and transactional exchanges with one another, their class position, and the young women who are, the coerced tokens of their exchange. This is a really interesting point where you can bring a gender perspective, a feminist critique together with a class analysis. I really love this phrase, the Epstein class.
Hi, Professor Fraser, here in the middle. Hi. Hi, my name is Alma, and I am a professor of gender and law. So thank you very much for your lecture. My question is, if you could please develop a little bit your theory of intersectionality. Do you agree with Kimberly Crenshaw, or how do you depart from that theory? And in that sense, I didn't catch very well from your talk when you were saying that conventionally gender and race are not construed by class. So maybe you can clarify the imbrication. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. That really does go to the heart of things. I would say that I am giving a materialist analysis of intersectionality, rooting it in the social organization of labor. And I don't think that's Crenshaw's framework at all. I admire her work tremendously, but this is a different theoretical framework. If there's one person it's closer to, but still not the same as, it would be Patricia Hill Collins, who really does think that she, like me, is trying to build a real social theory. Anyway, so I'm closer to her than to Crenshaw, but look, from the perspective of law, Crenshaw is absolutely generative and very, very important, I would guess. The other thing I would say on intersectionality, I'm so glad you zeroed in on that line that I said was the most important line. It's also the most controversial line, and I'm expecting pushback. What I am saying, because it's going to sound a little bit like, Leninism or something, but it's not. The line is, gender and race are not alternatives to class. These three things are not competing for which is the primary and which is the most important. Gender and race are implanted within class. They are, if you understand class in the right way, it's always already gendered and racialized. So the idea, the question is not to see these three things as three separate things that intersect. There's one social system that, in a way, is generating them, including, it also generates the misrecognition of them as separate somehow. That's important.
Professor Fraser, there are a lot of questions, but a little time.
Yeah.
So On behalf of our faculty, of our academic community, and especially from our students, we extend to you our deepest gratitude for being here, for sharing your time and your insights. Thank you very much.
En este momento, la doctora Sonia Venegas Álvarez hará entrega de una presea y un reconocimiento que dice: el Honorable Consejo Técnico de la Facultad de Derecho de la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México otorga la presea Omni Scientia, Omne Ius, todo el conocimiento, todo el derecho, a Nancy Fraser, en reconocimiento a su destacada trayectoria académica y valiosas contribuciones al desarrollo de la ciencia jurídica. Por mi raza hablará el espíritu. Ciudad Universitaria, Ciudad de México, a 4 de marzo de 2026, doctora Sonia Venegas Álvarez, como presidenta del H Consejo Técnico.